A very warm welcome to Addis News Hour. I'm Solomon Danye. Thanks for joining me. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed wrote an op-ed letter to the African Union that allowed the organization to investigate the alleged human rights violations in the state of Tigray jointly with the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission. As Ethiopia experiences this wave of conspired international admonition for daring to enforce the rule of law within its borders, I appeal to my fellow Africans to stand with Ethiopia in championing African solutions to African problems, his letter reads. The Premier in his open letter elaborated the whole extent that the government and the people of Ethiopia have been through to thwart TPLF's provocation of war. He pointed out that the government was forced into a law enforcement operation because of TPLF's heinous attack against the National Defense Force and repeated violations of the law of the land. The Premier throws a scathing comment towards the international community for taking the law enforcement operation a wrong way. While the international community has been loudly proclaiming the need for assistance, partner support remains at 30%, while the federal government has covered the lion's share of 70%, he said. The Premier also said that Ethiopia is very grateful to the African Union and its member states for their Pan-African solidarity and support throughout this difficult time. He finally expressed confidence that his government will continue to enjoy AU's unreserved support and understanding in the course of this humanitarian operation and all the challenges associated with strengthening the provisional administration of Tigray. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs disclosed that the GERD issue can be solved under the auspices of the ongoing African Union-led negotiation, which does not necessitate the involvement of a different party over the issue as a mediator. Ministry spokesperson Ambassador Dina Mufti also emphasized that it is not right for the UN Security Council to intervene in Ethiopia's internal affairs and pretend to pay special attention to the current situation and humanitarian assistance in the Tigray region. Kazanjani reports.
In the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ethiopia, Ambassador Dina Mufti has presented the ministry's weekly press briefing, focusing on political diplomacy, the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Sudan, and major activities related to economic diplomacy and citizen-centered diplomacy, and on a wide range of issues. During the occasion, Ambassador Dina told the press that Ethiopia understands both Sudan and Egypt as sovereign states having ultimate right to forge any sort of agreement, and will not be concerned in the alliance unless the move is posing a threat to the national interest. Besides, Dina underscored that work is underway to enable the Renaissance Dam negotiations to continue through the Democratic Republic of the Congo, which is leading the African Union, saying it could be perfectly capable of coming up with win-win solutions to all. Any other third party does not need to involve over the issue as an intermediary.
There was a presidential panel organized by the Congolese president, who has assumed the chairmanship of the African Union, as you know, and they are in charge of leading the tripartite negotiations. You know, the tripartite negotiations is negotiations of the Grand Renaissance Dam between the two countries, namely Egypt, Ethiopia and Sudan.
In a similar development, Ambassador Dina declared that the United Nations intervene in Ethiopia's internal affairs is a matter of great concern to Ethiopia, including the world. Foreign Ministry spokesperson and Public Diplomacy Director General Ambassador Dina stressed that Ethiopia had made a clear statement to the international community as Sudan had violated the border so far, but they kept quiet. According to him, the United Nations Security Council to intervene in Ethiopia's internal affairs Affairs is not right and shouldn't pretend to pay special attention to the current situation and humanitarian assistance in the Tigray region. He further addressed that Ethiopia would try to inform the fact on the ground on behalf of the ambassadors and diplomats to 50 member states of the Security Council based in Addis Ababa, as the focus was on the region's access to humanitarian aid, rehabilitation and reconstruction, as well as human rights abuses. He also affirmed that Ethiopia's readiness through an organized team of experts comprising the Attorney General and the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission has been set up to investigate human rights violations, adding that conditions have been created for international media interested in reporting on the situation in the region to report on the situation on the ground. He said 3.8 million people have benefited from the humanitarian assistance so far in Tigray state, emphasizing that the government was still providing 70% of the humanitarian aid to the region, despite the fact that it has provided unrestricted access to humanitarian aid.
Ambassadors of United Nations Security members, ambassadors of the members of the United Nations Security Council, 15 ambassadors, were briefed about the current situation in Ethiopia. Particularly, they were briefed about the opening up of the northern part of the country for the donor, for the relief operations. In contrast to the previous situations, now any donor agency needs only to notify Ministry of Peace about its travel to Tigray. The same thing holds true for the media guys who are free to travel and report on whatever they see in that part of Ethiopia. It's not only opening up, or it's not only allowing the donor agencies to travel with notifications. The government has also promised to stage a collaborative investigation into the human rights abuses. Whoever abuses human rights will be investigated by pertinent authorities and independent authorities, and so the government is committed to take measures. For that, there are institutions like the Attorney and the Ethiopian Human Rights Commissions that are ready and out on the ground to work closely with the other independent authorities or institutions that care about the investigations. The fact is that so far the relief operation, relief supply, 70% of the volume of the relief supply is given by the government, whereas the donor community made available only 30%.
With regard to citizen diplomacy, the government of Ethiopia has expressed condolences over the deaths of many prisoners in a migrant detention center in Yemen due to fire. The Ethiopian embassy in Oman is following the matter closely. As per the ambassador, the government of Ethiopia would like to reiterate that people should avoid illegal traveling and hoodwinked by human traffickers. And the government is investigating the number of Ethiopians injured in a fire at a prison in Yemen, and the details of the accident will be made public upon receipt.
With regard to the situation in Tigray, by now 3.8 million people were reached out to by the relief operations. Accessibility is open there, and anyone can travel there only by giving notice to the Ministry of Peace. And this has been actually praised by David Basley, the director for World Food Program, who has encouraged the rest of the international community to increase their supply of the relief. Very unfortunately, there was an incident in Yemen, in Yemen prison, where we had heard of the massive explosions that costed the life of people in the prison, of which we were told there are Ethiopian citizens of those who faced these unfortunate situations. So the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has expressed its condolence And our embassy in Oman, we don't have an embassy in Yemen, as you know, because of the situations there. Our interest in Yemen is being followed by our embassy in Oman, Muscat, and our embassy guys in Oman are doing their level best so as to help Ethiopian compatriots who are in unfortunate situations there.
It was also noted that various citizens have been repatriated from Beirut 54, Saudi Arabia, Jeddah 341, from Riyadh 676 over the week.
The intensified efforts that the Ethiopian government has been exerting to counter the defunct TPLF associates' disinformation campaigns and what the government described as their habitual lies seems to have persuaded the latter to absurdity. One of the sympathizers of the crushed faction, Deputy Africa Director at Human Rights Watch, Ida Sawer, recently tweeted that hyenas had eaten the corpses on my Kuho, Tigray state, with a view to justifying why they had not shown a single body or burial place from the alleged Aksum massacre. It was recalled that USAID's investigation team recently deployed in Aksum town could neither find a single burial place nor meet with relatives of the dead people, one of the TPLF-affiliated media said last Thursday. The Ethiopian Herald reads that the investigation team led by Asmelash met with the Deputy Administrator of Aksum St. Mary of Zion Church following Amnesty International's alleged massacre on the incident in Aksum. According to him, the church representatives failed to show the burial grounds of the victims to the investigation team, claiming that they buried the bodies in different places and at Church of Aksum. Investigators' desire to meet families of the dead was also unfulfilled. Illogically, Soya still stated that she is an eyewitness who claimed to count 25 remains that could not be identified. While addressing over 10,000 newly graduated volunteer corps on Saturday, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed said that many do not want to see Ethiopia in peace and progress, and they are trying to compel the nation into submission. The media attack is an extended arm to put us under pressure, but our aim is unstoppable, he remarked. Scholars say the recent position of Egypt and Sudan trying to obstruct the construction of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam project is in clear violation of international law. Their stance on the construction of Ethiopia's flagship project is not acceptable diplomatically or legally, they have stressed. Abtaman Shagri has more.
The international law clearly states regarding cross-boundary river that every country needs to work cooperatively to utilize the resources. The law also underlines that every country should capitalize on fair water utilization. Fully aware of this hard fact, Ethiopia is trying to use the Abai River fairly, causing no significant harm to downstream countries. As the owner of the river, the tripartite negotiation should consider Ethiopia's right to development, according to scholars.
ሌሎችም ደግሞ የተፈጥሮ ሀብት ነው ዓለምን ያቋረጠ ትልቅ ወንዝ ነውና
Abai River is a cross-boundary river. Ethiopia contributes over 80% of the overall water share of the river. We are now blocking other lower riparian countries to utilize this river. Thus, we have to discuss ways to secure the fairness of the resource to all three countries. I expect that Ethiopia needs to manage the tripartite negotiation based on this principle.
The dynamic status of Sudan on the tripartite negotiation and finding Egypt's position shows how unfair the country is according to legal experts.
The recent condition of Egypt and Sudan on GERD is not fair. They always tried to capitalize on their advantage in utilizing the Abai River as previous times. They state that Ethiopia has adequate water resource as well as heavy rains. This reason is logically weak in the overall tripartite negotiation process. The recent positions of these two countries are also outdated and unrecognized in the diplomatic concept as well as in the international laws.
According to the scholars, the current status and concern of Ethiopia is to utilize the resource fairly is an internationally recognized approach, and Ethiopia has every right to utilize its own resource.
ኢትዮጵያ እኔ ነኝ ብዙ ማመነጫው ስለዚህ ውሃውን ሙሉ በሙሉ እንጠቀማለሁ የሚል አቋም የላትም ኢትዮጵያ ስለዚህ
Ethiopia's position does not want to utilize the Abai River solely. Ethiopia is the source of Blue Nile and drought-affected nation. As a result, it is critical to fairly utilize Abai River to avoid such problems.
The scholars also pointed out that the construction of the grid helps to protect Sudan and Egypt from flooding and siltation. Director of Arbaminch University Water Resource Research Center, Samuel Kanalo, urges the general public to need to extend their support to the realization of good.
The general public support needs to continue to finalize the construction of GERD. When we go abroad, we have seen how other countries are developed. We have to take good lessons on how to develop this country like others by realizing such projects like GERD. This mega project is the reason for the paradigm shift to Ethiopia. The attention of the government is very well and the general public needs to support the government.
The scholars pointed out that Egypt and Sudan need to shift the existing position to work cooperatively with Ethiopia to utilize Abai River with cooperative manners.
Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Demeka Mekonnen had a phone conversation with Canada's Minister of Foreign Affairs Mark Carney on issues of mutual concern. In briefing the Canadian Foreign Minister on the current situation in Tigray, Demeka reiterated the fact that unfettered access is being given to humanitarian support and the media too. Although the government has been covering 70% of the humanitarian support needs in the Tigray region, the international community's assistance, including Canada's, is very much appreciated, he said. In this regard, he said the government has been able to address the food and non-food item needs of 3.8 million people in Tigray so far. The Deputy Prime Minister underlined that the government of Ethiopia is serious over the matter and has zero tolerance for human rights abuses and is committed to bringing perpetrators before justice. In their discussion about the upcoming general election in Ethiopia, Demeka underscored his country's commitment to making it free, fair and transparent. The Canadian Foreign Minister appreciated Demeka for the briefing and pledged to support the Ethiopian government's humanitarian assistance works with substantial funds. He also said the government of Canada will allocate NGOs that will lend hand to the humanitarian support activities in the Tigray region. The two sides concluded their conversation recalling the fruitful recent visit of Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and pledging to further strengthen the relationships between the two countries, according to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. In a similar development, Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Demeka Mekonnen welcomed U.S. Ambassador to Ethiopia Gita Passy at his office on Monday. The two sides commended the long-standing and fraternal relationship that exists between Ethiopia and the United States. Ambassador Gita said Ethiopia is the focal point for the U.S. in the region and called on to work together for peace and security. According to the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Demeka used the opportunity to brief the U.S. Ambassador on the genesis of the law enforcement operation in the Tigray region. He said all of the belligerent actions and intransigence of the TPLF group left the federal government with no option other than to carry out the campaign to end impunity and restore law and order in the region. Demeka's briefing included situations in the aftermath of the active phase of the law enforcement campaign that necessitated the launching of a massive rehabilitation and rebuilding efforts by the government. In explaining the existing situations currently, he reiterated that humanitarians and journalists have been given unimpeded access in the region and many are working on the ground. The Ethiopian Ministry of Water, Irrigation and Energy says The power from Beles Sugar Development Project is capable of supplying power to the rural community in the area. This came at the inaugural event of the Beles Jawi power transmission line built with 387 million birr in the state of Amhara. Sintayo Tamrat has more.
During the inaugural event, Amhara State Chief said the new project is aimed at addressing the power needs of people interested in engaging in agro-industry in the area. Following the national reform, there is increased demand for investment in the region. However, power shortage left over 400 mega factories non-operational, the State Chief said.
The work done to improve the infrastructure condition following the national reform is very good. The road infrastructure development is exemplary. The same holds true for power supply. However, access to adequate power supply continues to be a big concern in the region. Currently, 403 medium and large-scale industries need power to get operational.
I also took the occasion to highlight the fact that no one can stop Ethiopians from realizing the grand renaissance dam Ethiopia is building to address its energy demands.
The energy development being undertaken nationally is superb. There is high hope now that the country can greatly address its power demand. The Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam in this regard will have an equivocal role. The GERD is expected to alleviate the power gap in the country. We are making preparations to start second reservoir filling. We know there are tremendous interests and intentions to deter the construction of our Grand Renaissance Dam. However, I take this chance to assure you that there is no earthly power to stop us from realizing this flagship project.
The Ethiopian Minister of Water, Irrigation and Energy for his part said the power from Beles Sugar is capable of supplying power to the rural community in the area.
The issue of undertaking such substations will greatly help the efficient distribution of electric power from such dams like the GERD, Quaysha, and from alternative sources like geothermal and solar energy. They can also help the efficient use of electric power to development.
The newly built Beles Jawi power transmission line is a 380 million birr project fully financed by the government of Ethiopia.
Ethiopian communities in Djibouti are said to be on the way to build schools that help connect Ethiopian nationals in Djibouti with their Ethiopian identity. Alula Teklemaran presents the story.
Both Ethiopia and Djibouti have been entertaining long-standing diplomatic and economic ties. Documents show that hundreds of thousands of Ethiopians live in Djibouti. Hence, these Ethiopian communities seem to be concerned about their kids born in Djibouti regarding to education system. They are looking for alternative means to help connect Ethiopian nationals with their origin. Building school and introducing Ethiopia's curriculum have become prioritized to do so. Fortunately, the government of Djibouti has offered over 4 hectares of land to build Ethiopian community school in the country.
ኢትዮጵያ ኮሚኒቲ ትምህርት ቤት ቢኖር ነገር ኢትዮጵያ ኮሚኒቲ ትምህርት ቤት ገብታ ያገሯና ወጓን ባህሏን እያወቀች ትማራለች ማለት ነው።
The opening of this school will help many Ethiopians in Djibouti know their cultural values. My kid, for example, will be among the beneficiaries. So, it has multifaceted advantages to the Ethiopian community living here.
When I first heard that the government of Djibouti offered land to Ethiopians, I immediately went and kissed the land. I thank the Almighty God for showing me this phenomenon. Every child deserves modern education, so the construction of this school will help address challenges in connection with the absence of one's own curriculum policy abroad.
Special envoy and Ethiopian ambassador to Djibouti, Birhanu Tsaggaye, said the school is being designed by Dreddawa University.
ትምህርት ቤቱ ባለመኖሩ ኮሚኒቲው በተለያየ መልኩ ትምህርት ዕድል ልጆች ሳያገኙ ስለሚቀሩ
Children of the Ethiopian community have been in need of a school managed by Ethiopian curriculum system here in Djibouti, but now get the land for the construction of the school. It is now being designed by the Dreddawa University and led by a school building coordinating committee. We are making all the necessary steps to make that happen with the intended time interval and begin schooling next year.
However, the school building coordinating committee called for cooperative efforts to realize the Ethiopian community school and meet its intended goal. Upon fully operational, the school will run from KG level to 12th grade with Amharic, Afan Oromo, and Somali languages.
The regional states of Oromia, Benshangul Gumuz, and Gambela yesterday extended 282 million baht to support the ongoing humanitarian operation in Tigray. In addition to the financial contribution, the regions have also provided material supports, including ambulances. During the occasion, Tigray Interim Administration Chief Executive Officer Mulu Naga appreciated the regional states for their solidarity in supporting humanitarian assistance in the region. Since the unprecedented humanitarian crisis in the region, Ethiopians have been providing various support to enhance the humanitarian needs of the region. He added, the leaders of regional states have expressed commitment to continuing their effort to expedite the humanitarian and rehabilitation operations being undertaken in the region. That's according to the Ethiopian news agency.